situations. I have seen a man who has had diabetes and his toes gangrened, okay? 3 of his toes. And I'm sure neither of you have ever been near it or seen gangrene or smelled gangrene, but it is pretty vile. What happens is the toes turn black. He had gotten a blister on his foot, new pair of sneakers. People that have diabetes for long periods of time can't feel their feet. They have something called neuropathy, and they have no feeling. So he didn't know he got a blister. And the big rule of a diabetic is to check your digits. You're always supposed to check your toes and your hands and make sure you have no cuts because you can't always feel them. He didn't. So before you know it, he had black toes. They completely had rotted. So I went to the hospital and I sat there for 2 hours pulling stagnant energy out of his foot. And I watched his toes turn from black to gray to pink. It took me a long time. And believe me, it was not a pleasant experience because it really is very foul when the skin rots like that. And he didn't believe in this, but I told him, keep your eyes closed and just tell me what you feel. And he said, I feel you pulling. I feel like you're pulling stuff out of my feet. He lost one toe. The last toe, the pinky, did not turn, it didn't turn to pink. It stayed gray. Mm-hmm. That's the only one that he lost, which, again, is the better of the choice of the toes that you want to lose for balance. Then we have, and besides that, he healed so rapidly. I taught him how to put energy through himself, God's energy and light, through his body. And because I said, I can't be with you 24/7. You're going to be like this for a good 3 weeks in the hospital. So he began to use the thought process that I told him. He was supposed to have skin grafting in 2 months, and I think be back to work in 4. He skipped the skin grafting. He didn't need it, and he was back to work in 2 months. So that was something that I could visibly see in front of my eyes. I don't always get to visibly see. Mm-hmm. I recently saw a girl, well, in the last 2 years, came into my class as a student, and she told me on the phone that she had been in an accident, but she really wanted to come to my classes. She didn't ask for a healing session. So she came into the class, and there were 20 people in here, and this girl, her arm was so disfigured, and her hand, she had had 17 surgeries. She had been in a car accident that flipped a Jeep 4 times, took out 5 mailboxes. The glass was all broken. She was thrown out, the seatbelt severed. She was thrown out the passenger window. She was the driver. She was alone in the car. She ended up on the yellow dividing line in the street before the truck hit a pole, flipped over and landed on her arm. So her arm, the major artery was severed, but the pressure of the vehicle stopped the blood and actually kept her alive. But it burnt all the skin and muscle, everything off. 4 of her fingers were hanging off when they got, they airlifted her to the hospital. 4 fingers were off. She wasn't injured in any other way, other than some scrapes and things like that. It was amazing. But she said there was a huge blue light in the car when it was happening, and she felt very, very protected. She also said that she saw Jesus, her grandmother, and an uncle while she was laying in the street at 1 o'clock in the morning waiting for somebody because nobody came. She laid there for a while, and she managed to get her free hand in to the steering wheel, which amazingly had been removed from the column, was on the other side of the car, and she was able, and the horn still worked, and she got people to come out. So she was divinely saved. But anyway, she walks in my classroom, and her arm is so deformed. She's had, again, 17 surgeries. She's got a strip down the center of her arm of scar tissue, and it was very dark red and very tight. The fingers were all blown up. She had dark skin in some spots because the last surgery hadn't taken, so she had that necrotic black tissue. It was pretty hard to look at. It was like the elephant in the room, so I had to bring it up because even I, sitting here, had a hard time not looking at her. And that's, it was that out of form. So she, the end of the class, she was ready to leave. I went up to thank her for coming, and my intuition said, take her hand, pick up her hand. So I just took her hand in the doorway, and I didn't look at it. I just covered it with both my hands. And I talked to her that way for about 5 minutes. About 3 minutes in, she said to me, "Are you healing me?" And I said, "Well, I don't know if I'll ever see you again, so I figured I'd give it a little something." And she called me the next day. She said all her pain had disappeared. She had no more pain. Now, she lived on Vicodin and Oxycodone. She definitely was addicted to painkillers. And she said she gets up 2 times a night to take pills, and she reaches for them the first thing in the morning. She had no pain. She still has no pain after all this time. It's 2 years. But not only that, she had no use of it. They were going to take her hand off. 4 doctors, or three doctors said they could not save her hand. A 4th doctor came in, and he said that he could, but only for cosmetic purposes.
Yeah.
So she agreed to have the hand. She's 21 years old at the time. And they saved her hand, but she couldn't do any more than this. These 2 fingers, the closest she could get. These wouldn't move. Now she has full use of her hand. That summer, now I met her in May. By the summer, she was playing softball, driving stick shift. She took up piano lessons. She's engaged to be married now, but it isn't even that. The physicalness of her hand has changed. You can't see what you used to see. She came to see me again after that, and I told her I would see her after class for 5 minutes every week for a few weeks. And I just, not charge her, just sit there, hold her hand, and, see what's what. And now she's, it's as if it never happened. She's got some markings, but the doctor was in shock. He just said, "What do you mean you let some lady touch your hand?" I've seen the pictures. They brought me in a whole portfolio because the doctor takes pictures before and after every surgery. And she had all the pictures of when it first happened. There was nothing there. I mean, everything was gone. It was just bone. It looked like chicken bones. And it's just amazing. So it's an amazing miracle. And I don't do this. Understand, I'm just the middle person in between. I channel this. I don't take any credit for it, all right? The credit comes from God, from Jesus, who's ever working up there is my boss, because I woke up one day. I mean, I wasn't like this all my life. It happened. I went to a class. My hands started to heat up and burn, and next thing you know, the teacher said, "Put your hands on this person," and their pain went away. And so that's really how it started, and I was very, very confused when it started. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with it, where I was supposed to go with it. I thought I could heal the world. That's what I thought. I thought, okay, God gave me this gift. I'm going to go out and heal the world. I was ready to shout it from the rooftop, but people aren't ready to hear this. Okay, people don't want to know. People look at you like you're crazy, number one, including my family. Everybody thought I was nuts, but that's okay. I knew that it wasn't there one day, and it was here the next, and that I was supposed to do something important with it. So in the beginning, I began to think I could just touch people and their problems would go away. It took me a little while to figure out, and that's ego, okay? And ego to me is edging God out. That's what ego stands for. So I had to understand that it really had a lot to do with what people were thinking inside and their traumas, okay, as I said before. So now I started sitting and counseling people, finding those traumas. And after I find the traumas, and after I do some teaching, then I do the healing. So they've got a good head start because now I've told them what to do to change it. Because if I just put my hands on people, sure, I could give them a quick fix. But if they leave and they go back to the same situation or the same abusive family or the same alcoholic father, they're just going to get sick again anyway. Maybe in another way, but they're just going to get sick. So I have to do the whole package. After a while, I realized one-on-one wasn't enough and that I would have to teach a class. I needed to reach more people. So a class formed, and then 2 classes formed, and then 3 classes formed, and then 4 classes formed. And this is what happens. Now I'm teaching people to heal themselves before they have to come to somebody like me or before they end up in the hospital. Now I don't take insurance. So therefore, people are going to go to the doctor and they're going to exhaust every means before they come to somebody like me. So I get a lot of people who are desperate. I get them when the doctors can't help them anymore. Okay? I get them when doctors can't figure out what's wrong with them. So I'm like on the low end of the totem pole when it comes to stuff like that. But I managed to keep myself very busy. People do come, and, you know, with luck, there are times that I can't do anything. There are times that I'm called and it's too late, but I still have a job to do. I go to the hospital. I sit with them. I do healing work. I talk to them. I explain what I believe heaven is all about, and that there is life after death, and that you will see your family and your friends and your pets. And I tell them there's nothing to be afraid of, and I help them to cross. I help their spirit and their soul to be calm and not afraid, so that when they make the transition, they make it with grace. Okay? I learned that right in the very beginning. It was one of my first cases, a 31-year-old man with leukemia who was going to have a stem cell transplant, but he got pneumonia and they rejected him. And he was going to die. And so I spent a little time with him, and, you know, he felt, I'll never forget it, because he put his hand on my leg, or I put my hand on his leg, and he said as long as I was touching him, he wasn't afraid, you know, and it was a beautiful thing. Sad, but beautiful. And that happens periodically, not that often, and I'm very thankful for that. I don't have to do it that often. But I've had, over the last 20 years, you know, probably anywhere from 15 to 20 people that I had to go and work with before they passed. But I complete what I have to complete. I do what I have to do. I help people not to be afraid, and also not to be in pain. I've been called into hospitals a lot where people are in tremendous pain, and one man comes to mind. He also had leukemia. Same case, same type of situation. The one man was 31. I had 3 men like that. One was 31, one was 41, and the other one was 52. And I remember this, and it goes way back. But I remember it specifically because I seem to get cases in threes. I always get cases in threes. This second gentleman, a Greek family, and I was asked by a sister-in-law to come and see this man. He was in the hospital. He was dying. I went, I think it was Winthrop, and I walked in, and he was in an isolated room where you had to wear a gown and mask. And the brother met me in the little ante room before we stepped into his room. And he said to me, do not put your hands on my brother. Do not touch him. He is in excruciating pain. I said, okay, fine. But I know that this is a God gift. I don't hurt anybody. But I had to appease him for a little while. First of all, I'm 4'10". It's very hard for me to get my hands over somebody. But he told me, don't even lean into the bed. So it's hard for me to do that. I have to get my hands over somebody's head. I've got to lean my body in. But I did what I had to do, and the man was orange. When we walked in the room, I saw a man whose skin was orange. Now, first I looked at the lights because I thought they were casting a color on him, but his liver was failing. So his skin, everything had turned. He was beyond yellow. He was orange. And my next thought was this medicine called betadine that they put on you before they do surgery. But he was just one color. And he didn't speak to me. His eyes were closed. He would have appeared to be sleeping or in a coma. And I worked on him. There was about 7 people in the room. The family was watching me like hawks. Everybody was just kind of staring at me, waiting for me to make a mistake. They didn't want me there. The sister-in-law invited me, and the wife wanted me, but the others did not. So I started to work. I did what I had to do. Of course, I leaned into the bed. Yes, I put my hands on his body. You know, nobody stopped me because he wasn't making a face, or everything was fine. At one point in time, I was going to leave. I was finished, and I was explaining to the family that when the physical shell is that far gone, there isn't much I can do except help heal the soul. Okay? And I said that, and I was ready to leave. I had my hand on his abdomen, and he grabbed my wrist. He scared me half to death. He did not want me to let go, and because he had no pain. And he was just so peaceful when I was touching him. And his wife came over and asked him, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did he feel? And he said he was about a 3 at that point. But he had been in such excruciating pain, so he just didn't want me to go. He did pass a few hours later, but he passed gracefully and peacefully. And that was also the same with the man in his 50s. I remember the family offering to pay me to stay there, stay overnight. I said, I can't. you know, because he was so